everyone. Jake Smeester here, creative content specialist for Amazon Sumerian. I always get confused if it's creative content specialist or content creative specialist. But I have creative content specialist on this title card. So that's what we're going to go with. Thanks for joining me on this fine Thursday afternoon. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, or told me that they expected me to be drinking a beer while doing this. And so I am obliging. Oh, let me get that in the camera there. Amazon Sumerian pint glass, some sort of amber. So that's what I'm doing. So I hope you can enjoy a beer with me as well, unless you're, farther, because it's like 1 o'clock my time. So it's not exactly late. But hey, if you're on the East Coast, hey, it's perfect time. So today what we're going to be looking at is, let me pull up the topic. How to enter a building. This is something that I've just toyed around with a very little bit. So I do say this is unrehearsed. That is sometimes true. It's not like super rehearsed demos most of the time on this stream. This one really is not rehearsed at all. I do have an idea of how to do this. I did figure out a way to do it. So we're gonna experiment with it, but I haven't actually done it fully myself. So I hope you join me in figuring out how to do this. But what do I mean by enter a building? Well, so far what we have here, let me switch over to my screen. Okay, here's my city that we've been working with. I've added to it. Also, we did have just this one chunk here before, but now we've added this extra piece, and now we have a bridge, and then another piece over there. I've not yet added the textures to this part of the city, so I will be doing that hopefully in the next few days, and so by next week I will have that. Yeah, so that's what we have so far. We also have some boats and things like that. So the city is getting bigger and bigger, and so doing this sort of stuff is fun to be able to make it a little more interactive. So right now, let me zoom in and explain what I mean. Well, you know what? Instead of that, I'm just going to play my scene. I have a fly cam selected as my main camera. So what a fly cam is, it acts as a kind of a third person or a first person video game. And so if I am kind of wandering around my scene, I can use my mouse to control where I'm looking, and then forward. The forward button helps me go forward, makes me go forward. Go forward, and then backwards with the backward arrow key, and then strafe left is the left arrow key, and strafe right is the right arrow key. So that's what the fly cam is. It helps you fly through the scene. I can literally fly, so this is not actually walking, so I can actually go way up above if I want. And if I'm just using the mouse to kind of control where I am going. So let's say that I want to go into this building. Well, if I go into this building, what happens? Well, I'm just inside the model. And because it appears to have been built with quads, I can't see. It's like I'm inside of it, and I can see out. So that's the way a lot of quads work, or 3D primitive entities work, is that you can see them from one side, you cannot see them from the other side. So because I'm on the inside of it, I can see out. But when I'm on the outside of this building, let me just exit, then I can see the building. I can see the material. Okay, so this is obviously not what this building would look like. How do we make it so that when you enter through the door, you can enter into that building? I'm going to check my Twitch. I just want to make sure everything is working properly. Sound and everything going okay. Could be a little bit quiet. All right, it looks like I'm there. I see myself. All right. Let me go back to my screen. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to basically make it so we can, using the camera, the fly cam, go into a building and then have our environment change so that when I go through that door, I'm inside a building, or I'm inside a different room. So I'm not seeing those trees or from the inside of the building out. I'm actually in a room that is supposed to represent the inside of that building. So Levin Reigerner, hey, hello. You can correct me if I'm not saying that right. Levin Regner. Let me know how to say that more properly. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions, let me know. So you can ask me questions based on this topic or anything related. I will do my best. Close enough. Good. My last name is Smeester, and people screw that one up all the time, which is funny because it's written, it's pronounced exactly as it's written, but that's the way it is. Okay. Again, if you want to ask me other questions about this topic, shoot, go for it. If not, if you have something totally unrelated, interrupt me at any moment. That's the point of this stream. All right. So how are we going to do this? Well, my first thought was you can use what we call a trigger enter action in the state machine. And this is not what actually works. I'm just going to let you know right up front, based on some known issues that we already have with colliders. And so that was my first inkling was to do that. That didn't work the way I want, due to some known issues that are known. We're aware of them. So there's another kind of a hacky workaround way to do this. So that's what we're going to be working with kind of this other method. All right, so let's look at first our camera. Let me find my fly cam and focus on it. I was experimenting with a few different things, and so I attached this box to the camera. I don't really need that, so I'm just going to delete this box. And I have this other box in the scene that I don't want either, so I'm going to delete that. So let's first figure out what we're going to do. Let's use this building that I'm circling with my cursor. Let's use that building. So I'm going to just place my camera. Oh, that's too far. I'm using the little preview window down there, down the bottom left. I'm placing right there. I'm just going to put it sort of in front of this building so it's easier to test. And then I'm going to rotate this around the y-axis. That's actually good enough. I'm just getting close to that building. And then I do want my editor camera to be close to that as well. I see we have a question. Let me just get this camera here and I will take a look at that question. Am I in play mode? Okay. Driver 360. I would maybe add a box inside the door and cube map the sides to make a new space. What do you mean by that exactly? If you could expand on that. Are you saying to create a room? Driver 360, is that what you're implying, to create an actual new room? I'll let you answer that. So that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a state machine action or behavior so that when I enter through this door, a message is emitted and a bunch of stuff is hid. Like this whole scene can be hid essentially. And then we're going to enter a new room. I would make a box and yeah, you totally could do that. That's one way to do it. Try this with mixed results. I'm not so concerned what the room looks like so much as I am just going to use a totally random model. So that's a really good question because like what do I want this to look like on the inside? Well, I'm not a designer that's going to design a room that matches this exactly as it is on the interior. So I'm just going to kind of pull a random model I used to then just place it inside of there. So we'll show you what I mean. So I just went to Google Poly. Great resource, by the way, if you are looking for just 3D models for this sort of situation where I'm like, I don't need anything real specific. I just want to like work with something. My solution sounds better. We'll see. We'll see how this works. So I searched for room, and then I found this computer room, and this Bruno Oliveira. I'm not sure exactly how to say that, so I'll give full credit to this designer who created this. It's just a computer room of some kind. It really has nothing to do with this. So I just figured, all right, it's kind of a business type of room, and then this looks like a business office building of some kind. So that's what I'm going to use. I just hit click download, and I use the OBJ file. I already loaded it because I did have to change some of the texture settings a little bit to make this work. So it's already in my scene. It's just called computer. It's already there. I did it twice. Tried another one as well. Okay. So how do we do this? Let's find my room that I imported. I'm just going to physically place it inside of this building. And there would be multiple ways to do this. But this is just one. So I have it hid. I'm just going to show it there. And I'm just moving this room. This might not be the best way to do it. Okay, now that I got it, it's somewhere over there. Okay, one thing you can tell is that it's certainly tiny compared to this building. So that's my room. I mean, it looks like a computer room for mice, but that is fine. We'll increase the transform of this. Let's make it 4 times bigger. Maybe let's try 6. Let's just try 7. Let's just do 10. Even that isn't quite big enough. Let's do 17 or 25. Okay, that looks a little better. So I'm going to bring this up and rotate it around. And again, if you notice, some of the materials settings aren't quite right, but that's just not something I'm really concerned about. You can see there's yellow panels here. I got some of the yellow panels to show up. Some of them I did not, but again, not the most important thing. So I'm really just going to place it literally inside right there. Okay, so let's see how this works. Cool. Well, one thing I just realized is that this almost does exactly what I want. At the same time, I can still see out. So I could just build some walls that go in there. Just trying to think through this. I could just build some walls and just around it, kind of like Driver 360 was implying that you just build something around it to make it work. I'm going to play this again and try it again real quick to see how this works. You see how now there's just a bunch of stuff around that I don't really want to see, so it's just a little bit cluttered. So what I'd really like to do is hide the city that is in the city, or this building specifically. Well, this building is in city section 1. It's somewhere in here. And I don't really want any of that. It's one of those entities. And there are nesting entities and grouping entities. There's pluses and minuses of them. In this case, because all of these buildings, so if I just select city section, just to show you, everything that's for the most part contained within this wire box here is contained within this parent entity, city section 1. Now, that's useful for some reasons, because like right now, I can hide all of it just, using like a single state machine action or behavior. I can do the same thing for city section 2 and 3. So that makes it a lot easier. Instead of hiding everything, and so if everything was independent from one another, then we'd have to do some behaviors attached, and you'll see what I mean in a moment, attached to all these entities to make them disappear. So it'll become more clear in a moment what I mean, but there have been some cases where this is a little bit frustrating. So say I want to find this building. Well, I have to go search for it. I don't know the name of that building. I have to go search for it and try to find it and locate it. So that's one reason why it can be sort of a pain. But in this instance, I just want to hide everything. So having it all grouped into one larger parent entity makes it a lot easier. Ryan Reese, Jake, are you going to post this session? I was stuck in a meeting and got here late. It will be up on Twitch. Ryan, yes, on Twitch, and then it'll also be, I usually, if there are decent streams, I feel I move them to my YouTube channel. So they're typically found in 2 places. So to answer your question, yes, it will be available. Okay, so that is, thank you for your interest, Ryan Reese. Is it Ryan Reese or Rice? Am I saying the last name there right? That'd be great if you could tell me. So I'd love to know how to pronounce your name correctly. So all that to say is I want to hide everything. So having it grouped like this is great in this instance. It's, just depends on what you're trying to get done. All right, so what we want to do is I'm going to select my fly cam, and I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to select the state machine. I'm going to start a new behavior, and I'm just going to call it enter, all caps on, enter building. You are saying it right. Awesome. Enter building. All right, so I'm just going to call this action, or this state enter, and then I'll add action. Now this is the one that I would like to use. Trigger enter. So what that does is you have 2 colliders, and when one of those colliders is set as a trigger, if another collider enters it, it'll start a transition, or it'll transition to something else. It's for some reason not working. There's some known issues around colliders. That's one of the reasons why. So it's not working the way I want it to. So I'm going to have to use a different method, which is where was it? Camera distance, switch camera, in view. Shoot, I totally forget which one I'm looking for now. Inbox, that's what I'm looking for. Inbox. Okay, now this is why this one isn't, it's not the best, admittedly it's not the best behavior or action, but it'll work. Why is my, oh, never mind. So what it is that when I enter the point 1, or enter a box that's set between -1, -1, -1, and 1, 1, 1, that's essentially taking 2 points, opposite points, in space, and then it creates a cube box based on those 2 points, and it creates a box so that when your camera enters that, it'll then set a transition. Or if it's outside. So I can do the opposite where I'm inside that box, and then if my camera leaves, then it will, or my entity, in this case, my fly cam is the entity I'm adding this to. So that entity, when it is inside the box, when it leaves, then it'll trigger a transition. But this case, we want to make it so that when it enters this box, a transition is set. All right, so what we want to do is mark it so that when I enter this door, a transition happens. Well, I don't know this. I don't know the points of this. The corner of this door. I don't know the coordinates of that. So that's something I do have to figure out. Move that up a little bit. So how do I do that? Well, it's a little manual. So I need to figure out generally where I'm at in my scene. It's a large scene. So I'm just going to look at 132, 2.5 for right now. And what I'm going to do is just add a box. This is just a marker box. I'm just getting coordinates. I forgot already. Flycam. 132, 2.5. So 132, 2.5. Then lastly, makes sense what I'm doing. Just a second. 857. 857. It's a lot easier when you have a small scene. With a big scene like this, it takes more work to get things around. I'm going to make this box smaller, so let's make it 0.2. And let's just find out where the coordinates are of the section that I want to be able to enter into and out of. Okay, so it's roughly 141, 3.4. Enter building. I already forgot. 141 and 3.4. I can only do two numbers at once. 141, 3.4. 141, 3.4. And 854. And where is it again? $854. Great. All right. No, so that's 0.1. Now I need to make it 0.2 down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this little box and bring it down to the bottom of my door. And if I could just write these down to myself. 141.07, 856.8. All right, this is the most boring part. It's almost over. So then I enter in that point here, 141.07, 856.8. All right. So those boxes 1 and 2, they have really nothing to do with this scene. They were just markers for me to figure out where this was in space. Okay, now let's add a state. And we want to use inside box. And we're just going to figure out if this works to begin with. So I'm going to play my scene. Drink some beer. And then, so if I move my camera between these 2 points, it should work, but it did not. Okay, so let's figure out why. I'll try it with something else. I'm just looking at something for the moment. Let's try that again. Let's maybe just try 142. There we go. All right, so it worked. You see how it actually transitioned? That's really all we needed. All we needed to do is that so when this camera enters into this room here, or enters into those points, it will transition to something. That's all we needed. And that's the cool thing about Sumerian, is that if you can just get an action to trigger from one thing to the next, then you have something that you can start using. So my favorite is the emit. Shoot, did I just delete that? That was dumb. There we go. Did not mean to delete that. So now what we want to do is emit. We're going to emit a message. And then look for the emit message action. And then we're going to call it city off. That's the message we want, city off. And then city section 1 is the entity that this building is inside of. We want all of this to go away, or at least temporarily. So we're going to add a state machine. And we're just going to call this one turn city turn. We're going to call it city on off. That's what we'll call it. Just thinking ahead the way this is going to work. So, okay, we want this action to be listening. And we'll look for a listen action. And it's like listening for city off. All capitalized letters do make a difference. So make sure you're doing that when you're using emit messages and listening to messages. And then we're going to add another state. And this is going to be, we're going to call it hide, and then we're going to look for the action hide. It's not deleting anything, it's just hiding this message. Okay, so when my camera enters into that area, that box, it's going to emit a message, city off. The city is going to be listening for that message, and when it gets it, it's going to then hide itself. There we go. It worked. See how most of that's gone? You might be wondering, well, I still see a lot of city. Correct. That's because we only applied that behavior to a certain section of the city. Now, the cool thing is we can just now do the same thing to section 2. And instead of rebuilding that whole state machine and having multiple behaviors that I don't want, I can just take that. I'm just filtering down to behaviors over here in the assets panel, and then I'm finding the city on off over here, and I'm applying it to the other section. And then, so that's city section 2. Let's now select city section 3. That's way over in the distance, but I do want that to disappear. And we'll add a state machine component, and then we're going to take the building city on off and apply it over here. So everything now is going to be listening for that same message, or that same behavior is applied to 3 different city sections, so that when I enter it, everything disappears. Well, not everything. I still have my Jack Ryan video hanging out up there. Okay. Now, if I want, what else could I do here? My computer room that I have in there. Let's kind of go to what Driver 360 was sort of implying about, like, building a cube map. I'm going to hide everything, and now I'm just I'm going to build some walls around this so it's not just a city hanging out in the middle of the ocean. So let's go to, let's add a quad. Again, it's a really big scene, so everything is really far away. And if you're wondering why is the center point, I'll just show all these real quick. Why is the center point of the scene way over here? That's because that bridge is going to lead to another part of the city, and there's a whole bigger section over there, a part of this model that I just haven't added yet. So the center point is actually going to be in the middle of this scene. It looks like it's way off, but it actually is. It is in the middle once you get everything imported. I just haven't done that yet, but I will. Let's go back, hide these again. Added a quad. Now I'm just going to take this quad and nest it under computer. Oops. Quad. I'm building walls. That's what I'm doing. So let's make the transform. It's very small. We want to make it might be a little bit too. Let's uncheck that. Okay, now I'm just going to duplicate this. And then we need to rotate him to 0, I believe, would make sense. And then we're going to duplicate that quad. So now we have a quad 3. And let's rotate that. Looks like it's going to be -90. So this one, I'm going to move it slightly over here. Same thing with this other one. So there. Great. Now, oops, quad 3. I'm going to duplicate this one now. This one needs to be flipped 180 degrees. So if I just remove, it's -90. I need it to be +90. So if I can just remove the negative mark, it should be fine. There it is. Okay. And then let's duplicate it again. I need a floor. This probably needs to be flipped -90 degrees. And we need it to be 0.6. Nope, I didn't want to do that. I want to have it increase the scale. So we'll just go to 0.6, 0.7. Just making this. I don't actually need to do that with the Z because it's and we'll make one more for the ceiling and we'll bring that up there, and I think we need to flip that. Okay, good. Cool. All right. So now let's try it again. So if we play the scene, oh, that's not what we want. I was just hiding all these city sections just while I was building this. Well, that's kind of ugly, but that's okay. We will fix that in a minute. Let's do the. So really what I want to do now is I want to hide everything here, and then when I enter it, I want to show it. So I want to do the opposite. So let's do that by going to the computer. Let's actually do the city on off. This is just going to be the reverse. Duplicate city on off. Then we get city on off 2. And we're just going to call this one room on off. So instead of hide, though, we're going to delete that action and add the show action. And we'll rename it show. And to start off with, we're going to hide it over here in the entities panel so that when starting off the bat, and the only reason I'm doing this is because those quads that I just built like went way outside of the bounds of this this building. So now, what is happening? When I enter into this, the camera has a behavior that when I enter into this box, which is a box that I built pretty much around this door, enters that box, it emits a message, and the city sections then listen to that message and then hide themselves when they hear that message, and then the room entity then shows itself conversely by when it hears that same message. And something didn't happen quite right. Okay, so the computer is hid. Let's look at, oh, I know why. I do this every time. Ugh. Every time. What I did is that I duplicated this. I went down here to the assets panel. I duplicated the action. The behavior. I created the behavior, but I didn't apply it to anything. So when I go to my computer, it doesn't even, if you see the computer entity, the computer room entity, it has no state machine on it. And so it actually is not listening to turn on. So it's just turned off. So I got to add a state machine. Then I need to take the, where is it? What did I call that? Room on off. So there we go. Need to start it over. Live demos are so fun. Especially unrehearsed live demos. Okay. There we go. That was a little janky. Let me try that again. Okay, so I'm outside the city, or outside the building. When I go in, then I'm inside. So this could work to say that I want to, it's pretty simple when, so there we go. It's working the way I want it to work. Now, if I wanted to make it so I could make it, and I'll try to do that. Let's see what time it is, 20 minutes or so. I will try to do the opposite so that when I exit, then it will do, it will then it'll switch everything back. I'll do that in a minute. Well, let's just do it right now. So all I need to do essentially is just keep adding on to all these. I've created 3 behaviors, and I just need to edit them a little bit. So let's start with the inner building behavior. I'll stop that. So it emits a message. City on off. It doesn't have a transition label or a transition action, so I need to add a transition action just so it can transition to another state. And I just want to duplicate this behavior. Yeah. I'm thinking of if there's a better way. Oops. If there was a better way. So what I could do is that when I exit the building in any direction, the same thing would happen. But if I did that, then I'd have to figure out all the different coordinates again, and I don't feel like doing that right now. Take a couple too many boring minutes. So I just duplicated that message so that when it goes in through that, the camera goes through that same space, it will then transition to another emit. And I will duplicate this one, but I need to change the message to city on. So now we have a rotating or a cycling behavior so that we can continuously do this one, not just once. Ryan Reese, so far the optimization question. How does this all work in the render engine in WebVR? Does it make it more lightweight? How does it all work in the render engine in WebVR? Well, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure, to be honest, right off the bat. It just depends on the size of your scene. So let's look at the size of my scene. I'm going to go to City Complete, the name of my whole project or my whole scene. and then scene size, recalculate. So right now I have 17.525 megs. So this is a large scene, like in 3D space, meaning it spans like it, when I'm moving one entity from one side to the other, it takes a long time. It's just big, but it's not big like in terms of compute size. So it's only 15.5 megs. So, the recommended is like, once you start eclipsing like 50 megs, that's when it can be a little bit tricky. So this really isn't that big of a scene. Well, I'm being a little confusing. It's large. I don't want to say physically because it's not physical, but it's big. There's so many things in here. It's a city, but it's not very large in size. So it's not that large to operate. So for optimization, the more stuff you have in there, technically the slower it could go, but it's has nothing to do with your behaviors. Just depends on how big your scene is, and this one's not very big. I said that in a really confusing way. Let me just clarify one more. It just depends how big your scene is. If it's a fine working scene in an optimal size, then there shouldn't be an issue. But if you start eclipsing kind of that 50, I believe it's the 50 megs mark, then it could be a little bit tricky. Yeah, and these are low poly models. That is true. That wasn't it was kind of a roundabout way of saying it just depends on the size of your scene. Does that answer your question, Ryan? Let me know. Okay, back to my city on off. Nope, the inner building. Toggle the state machine. All right, so now we have did I change this? City on. So anytime I go through the doorway, it's going to emit a message. This first time it'll be city off. The second time it'll be city on, and back and forth, back and forth. And then the city on off. We're going to sort of do the opposite here by adding transition. Nope. Wrong state. Listening, I'm going to duplicate that, get rid of the transition, and listen for that other message. Then we just need to add another state called show, and then add a transition action as well. Most important thing here is that your first listening action, really one, should be set as your initial state. Thinking about once you get higher res, what can you do? Lighting is a big issue. Textures are a big issue. Like, I shouldn't say big issue. Lights are heavy in compute. Textures are heavy in compute. So even just adding textures to scenes are a lot heavier. But there is actually other ways to do that. Like, you can actually stream in or pull in images, textures essentially from S3, and apply them to a model of some kind, so that you can make it a lot cleaner, a lot less involved. Well, it'd be more involved in actually plugging in all those URLs, but it'd be a lot more lightweight. Yeah, I mean, there's several different things. It really just depends on the scene you're doing. If you have 20 hosts in the scene, well, it's a lot of hosts to have running in one scene. If you have just one host, or in this case we don't have any hosts right now, makes it a little bit easier. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Okay, so my inner building is working, and then room on off. This one's going to be just similar to the other one, where it's just we got to complete the cycle. We're going to duplicate this. We'll change the add state and look for hide. And look for the hide action, and then come on, Transition. That's what I'm looking for. All right, so room on off. I'm going to get rid of this trigger one. I want that one while I'm looking at it. Room on off looks like it's working. Enter building action or behaviors complete, and then same with city on off. They're all applied to the correct entities, so let's just hope it works. Great. I don't really have a mark for this door. I can just kind of see that it's roughly right here. So go through it again, and it appears. So that when but if I go this way, that room is not there. So, and that is one way in which you can start adding multiple environments to a single scene. So say I want to make, I want to be able to walk around this big scene, but then I want to be able to enter a building, and that kind of pulls up a whole other larger scene. If I can walk around the whole building, well, that's a whole other thing. So that's just one way you can start hiding some and showing some others, and actually use this fly cam to really wander around an area and move around an area. I have not tried this with VR, actually. I just thought of that. Trying this with VR so that when the VR headset enters, it would do that. I mean, again, there's another way to do it, is that you actually just build it to match the inside of this so that they both are existing and they're both showing at the same time. That's one way. That's one way to do it. So that's kind of what I wanted to demonstrate today. Are there any other questions? Anything else out there you want to cover? Been adding, if you haven't been watching all of these, I need to stop this. If you haven't been watching this series, again, this is just a time to ask questions and just to experiment around with Sumerian. Also, it's some things we've done is just how do you add video. That's why we added a Jack Ryan trailer. I am in the middle of that series right now, enjoying it very much. We also added a billboard back here. I don't know why it's not there. I put that in there. It's not, maybe I must have deleted that. A billboard so that it actually is cycling through various images. Why did I get rid of that? I'm going to have to get that back. Not sure what I did with it. Yeah, and then also if you notice that when I press play, it turns from night to day gradually. That's because we have some other state machines that are running continuously. So that the lights, there's a light kind of orbiting around our scene, kind of like the sun. Well, you know what I mean. Sun moving around there. I know that's not technically true, but that's how we're mimicking it in this scene. And then we're also having a large sphere kind of go from completely visible. So it's tweening between the opacity between fully on and fully off to have a dark and light. But I'm not seeing it for some reason, so maybe I turn that off too. Anyway, so other questions. Have you tried Vive Focus with Sumerian? Vive Focus. I have not. I've the HTC Vive. The Vive Focus. Let's look that up real quick. I don't know what the Vive Focus is. No, I have not tried that yet. Did that just come out? I feel like that maybe just came out recently. June 1st, 2018. So possibly. Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I have not, to answer your question. Oh, Ryan Reese, Vive Focus is only in China. So no, I have not. I'm in Seattle. I thought Vive Focus was coming Q4. Sweet Games, you're back. Thank you for coming. I don't know. I'm not following all of the headsets releases. Once we get our hands on it, and I'm confident that's something that we will certainly look into, because we do support the Vive, the HTC Vive. But yeah, I've not seen the Focus. HTC has been shipping developer kits for a while in the US. Yeah, I have not seen one of these on our team in our office. So we currently don't support it, but I guess we will wait to see if that's something that would make sense for us. Driver 360, have you tried it? Have you been able to use it before? Is it cool? So it's really standalone, so it's 6 degrees, 6 off. That's cool. So it's got some inside-out tracking, some stereoscopic cameras, it looks like, on the outside. Do you have an Oculus Go? We do. Yes, tried it in a few hours ago. Oh, interesting. Tell me what you thought. I'm curious what your thought was of it. Was it smooth, or was it kind of glitchy, or I don't know. Tell me. I'm curious how your experience was. Sweet Games, do we have an Oculus Go? We do have an Oculus Go. We have a few of them. I have not personally been able to use it. I shouldn't say I haven't. I just haven't. I use the Oculus. That's just what I've focused on. But we do have tutorials that help you get started with the Oculus Go if you have not done that. Which ones do we have in the office? We have the Oculus Go, the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, the Lenovo Daydream, and Google Daydream. Yeah, we have several. I mean, there's a ton. We're also just experimenting with a lot of different stuff. I've been using Oculus Go for Sumerian. The trickiest part is the camera placement. Interesting. Okay. Expand on that. I'm curious what you mean. This past weekend, the Vive was giving demos of the new wireless adapter for Vive. Yeah, I saw that, actually. I think I was I was waking up and I got a notification on my phone that they're selling wireless adapters for the Vive. Driver 360 is the high resolution the Oculus Go with a higher frame rate. Oculus Go performs with Sumerian. It's inconsistent for me, but still looking forward to standalone smoothness. Agreed. Having the cords and stuff, it's rough personally for me. Some people don't mind it. I prefer being able to move around, but it's the trick. It's just a tough thing to get right. And there's so many improvements and things are getting so much better, but they're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting closer and closer, I feel like. It's cool to see stuff like this come out, like even backpacks and wireless kits. Sweet Games, what are you, I'm curious what you're building. What are you using Sumerian for? What you typically, this is a good question for everybody. What are you guys using for? What are you all using for? Like in VR, are you doing mostly games? Are you doing development? A little bit of both. Can we have a way to download Sumerian scenes so they can run on a local server offline for headsets like the Go? Currently not. That is something that is a common request during Driver 360. It's a common request. I believe it is on. Believe it's on a roadmap, but very common question. But currently not. Ryan Reese. Oculus Go is more like a phone, so more training. Are you referring to my question about what you're using for more training? Training is a huge one. I'm about to release a beginner's course. Several people here it might be useful to go through this beginner's course. You're laughing at me. Training was for question, yeah. Gotcha. Training is a super common use case people are interested in using VR for, which I think is super fun. And created a training simulator. We did one of our last Twitch broadcasts on the AWS channel was using creating a training simulator. It was like a marathon, 2 hours building this whole scene. That definitely takes a little longer than that. but training simulator of like actually in VR. So it's one of the things that we are going to be releasing as a beginner's course on our documentation site here very soon. I'm excited about that. Oculus Go is comfortable to wear. I do miss the 360 degrees of motion. Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. Happy to test the ball thing was cool. Yeah. All right, good. You check that out. Yeah, it's a fun scene to just kind of see like, okay, there's really very little coding involved, and you can get some interesting things to happen in a very useful demo working pretty easily when having no experience with Sumerian. So it's a fun thing. But I broke it down into 15 different videos. So those will be released soon. Thank you, Jabber360. I'm glad you enjoyed it. What ball thing? Sui Games. It's the training simulator that I'm referring to. That'll be on our training site or our documentation site shortly as beginner's course. It's a sorting training simulator. You grab a ball with your controller and you drop it in a bucket on either side, and you get points based on correct drops in the orange or blue buckets, because I'm a Broncos fan, so orange and blue all day. Yeah, you'll see what that is shortly. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. I almost drank a pint. Almost. Oh, why am I here? There we go. That makes more sense. A little bit tiny. Is there documentation for S3 textures? Have not tried that yet. Yes, there is. I know, I need to hydrate. Is there documentation for S3 textures? I am about to push the button to publish a video. If you watched our stream on Tuesday, we did one for a slideshow demo. How do you create a slideshow demo that where a host talks through a slideshow, and using SSML marks, you can dynamically change your textures. Those textures are then using S3 images. So thank you, Taylor. Glad you were here. So yes, it's not strictly all about S3 textures, but it will work in it. So, yeah, I'm trying to think. Yes or no? There's two tutorials. We're also working on releasing here probably tomorrow how do you add an S3 video to stream on a texture. So just like us for the 2 new tutorials that'll be coming out today and tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, definitely today, then another probably tomorrow. So look for those, and we'll also be publishing those in lots of different places. But both of those will kind of help you get started with S3 on textures. Sweet Games, when I make the VR scene, sometimes the VR camera overrides where I set it when load the scene in VR. So I just make an object a child needs so that I can move things around in relation to where the camera loads. Interesting. Yeah, if you think that you're seeing a bug, then I would say something in our community Slack channel, which is, let me get Slack up and hide the topic, and boom. Nope. That was too much. There it is. Slack.Sumerian.world. I think most of you that I'm talking to are probably in there. But yeah, Sweet Games, if you are seeing something you think is a bug, there's a channel called Bugs in there. So bring that up, and we'll look at that and let you know if there's a workaround, or we'll log it. So yeah, we want to make sure we're keeping track of all that stuff. All right. 2 o'clock, 2:01 now. I'm going to log off. Thanks again for joining. If you have any questions, find me on Slack, which is right there. Or you can always send me questions on Twitch. But yeah, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.